The red sun hung low in the alien sky, painting the mountains in blood-colored light. The air was dry, heavy with smoke. In the center of a cracked stone circle stood a tall, rusted pillar, its edges covered with ancient symbols. Around it, the crowd gathered. They were not silent. They chanted. They threw stones. Chained tightly to the base of that pillar was a young alien girl. Her skin was pale violet, covered in cuts and bruises. Her long silver hair was tangled and stained. She didn't cry anymore. She had cried enough. Her voice was gone. Her eyes, once full of light, now stared into nothing. They called her a curse, a bad omen. She was born during the storm season, when lightning burned the crops and the river dried early. The elders said she brought bad luck. For years, they feared her. And now, at last, they were offering her to the gods. She was 16. The stone hit her shoulder, then another on her side. Her knees gave up, but the chains held her. Upright, the high priest raised his staff. The crowd grew louder. The next step was fire. But before the torch could be lit, everything changed. From the edge of the trees, a figure stepped out. Not tall, not glowing, not a god. A man. A human dot. He looked tired. His uniform was dusty. His left arm bled from a scratch. He held a strange-looking weapon across his back and walked slowly, like he was not sure what he had found. The crowd paused. Their eyes turned toward him. He didn't say a word. He looked at the chained girl. She looked back. Their eyes met. Hers full of pain. His full of confusion. And then anger. He saw her bleeding. He saw her chained, and he understood. One of the tribal guards yelled something in their language and threw a spear at him. The human ducked, pulled his rifle, and fired once into the sky. The sound echoed like thunder. The crowd screamed and scattered back. The priests dropped their torch and ran. The human didn't shoot anyone. He wasn't there to kill. He walked forward slowly. Careful. The chained girl trembled. She didn't know what he wanted. No one had ever come close with kindness. But he reached her without fear. He looked at the chains. Thick, rusted, locked with alien bolts. He knelt beside her and pulled out a tool from his pack. His hands were fast. He knew what he was doing. She couldn't speak, but her lips moved. Why? He looked up at her face. Because you don't deserve this, he said softly. The lock snapped. One chain fell. He worked on the second. Suddenly, a rock hit his back. The villagers had returned. Now angrier. Now with more weapons, the second lock broke. The girl collapsed into his arms. She was too weak to walk. Her body trembled. The human didn't hesitate. He lifted her gently, and then he ran. The forest behind the stone circle was thick and dark. But he moved fast. His boots hit the dirt hard. Branches cut across his arms. But he held her close, shielded her from everything. She clung to his chest, confused, scared, but also safe. Behind them, drums started. The chase had begun. They didn't know each other, not even names, but something had connected them. A silent promise. He had broken her chains and now he would not let them chain her again. After what felt like hours, the human found a small cave hidden behind a fallen tree. He slipped inside and laid the girl down gently. She tried to sit, but her body failed. He gave her water. She drank like she hadn't in days. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. She looked at him, really looked. His eyes were strange, soft but strong. He spoke gently. "You're going to be okay now, I promise." She wanted to believe, but she had heard lies before. Still, for the first time in her life, someone had come for her. Someone had risked their life for her, and deep in her heart, something began to wake up again. Hope, The fire was still fresh in his lungs. The human whose name was Jacob pressed his back against the stone wall of the hidden cave. His rifle aimed at the narrow entrance. The alien girl lay quietly behind him, wrapped in his jacket. Her silver hair spread across the floor like moonlight. Outside, he could hear them. Footsteps, drums, strange alien voices yelling into the trees. They had followed him. They wanted her back. But Jacob didn't move. He waited. Listening, the girl, weak but awake, lifted her head slowly. Her voice was rough, like it hadn't been used in weeks. "Why? Are you still here?" she whispered. Jacob turned to her, eyes calm but firm. "Because they'll kill you." Her lips trembled. "You should have run alone." He gave a small, tired smile. "I don't run from what's right." She had no answer for that. No one had ever said such words in her presence. Not her people, not her elders, and certainly not strangers. Her name was never spoken to them. She had no name only. A label, cursed one. Jacob turned his attention back to the cave opening. His fingers rested on the trigger. Every second that passed, the danger grew. Suddenly, a rock bounced just outside the entrance. Then another. They were trying to draw him out. Jacob inhaled deeply. He was outnumbered. Low on ammo, his signal device was broken in the fall. He had no way to call for help. But he had something more important than tools or weapons. He had a reason to fight. Slowly, he removed something from his pakata. Small photo, slightly worn. A woman with dark hair, smiling. A child with curly hair, laughing. His family, gone now, but not forgotten. Their memory kept him going. He tucked it away. Then dash movement. A spear. Darted into the cave and hit the far wall. Jacob didn't flinch. He stepped into the light. Outside, 5 tribal warriors stood in a half circle, faces painted with ash and hatred. One of them pointed and shouted. Jacob raised his rifle high, pointing it to the sky. Boom! The shot echoed across the valley. Birds screamed and flew from trees. The warriors froze. Jacob slowly lowered the rifle and pointed it at the ground. He didn't want to kill, but his warning was clear. One more step, and he would. The warriors looked at each other. The human's eyes were sharp, calm, unafraid. Not like the others. They had hunted before, and he had already broken the sacred chain that made him dangerous. They hesitated. Then they stepped back. Just a few feet, but enough. Jacob turned and returned to the cave. The girl stared at him. "You didn't shoot them." "I didn't have to," he said simply. "But they'll come again, I know." He knelt beside her, checked her wounds. Most were shallow, but her left leg was bruised badly. "I need to move you tonight," Jacob said, "before they come in greater numbers." The girl nodded. Her voice was softer now. "You are not like them." "I'm human," he said. "We don't chain people, at least. Not the good ones." She studied his face. He was tired. Rough, but something about him made her feel like she mattered. "No one ever helped me before," she whispered. Jacob looked into her eyes. "Then let me be the first." As the sun fell, Jacob made a makeshift stretcher from branches and fabric. He gently placed her on it and covered her with what little warmth he had left. He moved through the forest slowly, careful not to make noise. The girl didn't speak, but her eyes stayed on him the whole time. She still didn't believe this was real. Behind them, torches burned. The villagers were searching, spreading out. Jacob moved downhill, toward the old riverbed. A key remembered, passing it during his survey mission. If he could reach the dry tunnels beneath it, they might find shelter. Every step made his back ache. Every sound made his finger twitch toward the trigger. Still, he walked. Because she couldn't, and because Something inside him refused to let her die. Hours passed, at last. He found a crack in the stone wall near the riverbed, leading to an ancient tunnel, half collapsed but dry. Safe enough, he lit a small glow stick and placed it beside her. She looked up, her lips parted. "Why do you care?" she asked again, softly this time. Jacob looked at her. "Because no one cared when my daughter died, and I promised if I ever had the chance, I'd never let someone be left behind again." The girl blinked slowly in her heart. Something was changing. She didn't even know his name. He didn't know hers. But he had already given her more than her whole species ever had. The night was not quiet, deep in the broken tunnel beneath the dried riverbed. The alien girl lay wrapped in the human's jacket. Her body still ached, but she was alive. That alone felt strange. For so long, her people had treated her like she was already dead. Now, someone had carried her, fought for her. She didn't even know his name. She glanced toward the glow stick near the entrance. The human Jacob sat with his rifle resting across his lap, his eyes half closed but alert. His face looked calm, but she could feel his mind was awake, listening, preparing. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the tunnel. A screeching call, then another. Higher this time. Closer. Jacob stood up fast. The girl sat up, her arms shaking. "What is it?" she whispered. "Scouts," he said quickly. "Drones?" Before she could ask what that meant, a red light swept across the tunnel ceiling. Jacob moved fast. He threw his body over her, covering her in darkness as the red beam past the drone outside let out a screech. It had seen movement. "We're out of time," Jacob said. "They know we're here." He grabbed the girl gently and helped her onto the stretcher. Her legs were still too weak to walk. "Apache's awake. I can help," she whispered. "Tell me what to do." "Tell me what to do." "Hold on," he said, "and trust me." He pulled the stretcher and ran. The tunnel shook behind them. Heavy footsteps approached. Not from drones this time. These were tribal hunters, larger than the villagers before. Their armor clanged with each step. The human didn't stop. Smoke began to fill the passage. Somewhere above, they had lit fire near the entrance. The smoke would drive them out, or burn them alive. Jacob coughed, but kept running. The path was steep now, full of stones and fallen beams. He used his back to push broken wood aside, carving a way through for the stretcher. The girl's eyes burned from the smoke. She could barely see, but she could feel the human's heartbeat. Fast, focused, alive, up ahead. The tunnel split. Jacob made a decision and turned left, toward a collapsed shaft that sloped upward. Behind them, the sound of weapons clashed. The tribal hunters had entered the tunnel. "We need to lose them," Jacob muttered. But how? The slope grew sharper, the smoke thinner. They were near the surface, and then they burst out into the night. Stars stretched above. Cold wind brushed their faces. But there was no time to rest. A roar echoed from behind. 3 large warriors stood at the tunnel mouth. One pointed and charged. Jacob looked around. They were near the old ruins of a forgotten watchtower, half swallowed by vines. The structure leaned sideways, but the stairwell still held. Jacob lifted the girl again. No time for the stretcher. He carried her up the steps, 2 at a time. She held tightly to his chest. "Why are we going higher?" "Because we need a distraction." At the top of the tower was a broken signal dish, rusted and half covered in moss. Jacob placed the girl down behind it and took out a small black box from his vest. "Stay low. Whatever happens, don't move," he said. She nodded. He turned and ran back down the stairs. The girl's eyes widened in fear. "Wait, what are you doing?" He didn't answer. At the tower base, Jacob shouted, "Hey, over here!" The warriors turned, confused. Jacob raised his arms. "Come on, you want me? Let's go." They charged, but Jacob didn't fight. He ran into the forest, drawing them away from the tower. Back at the top, the girl crawled to the edge and watched. Her body trembled, not from cold, but from fear. Fear for him. She had known pain. She had known cruelty. But never had she known someone willing to risk everything. For her, minutes passed, then dash explosions. Small ones. Flashes in the trees. Jacob had triggered traps using his last grenades. He was buying time, and then silence. Nothing, no footsteps. No screams, just wind. Suddenly, a hand grabbed the tower ledge. It was him, bloody, bruised, but alive. The girl let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Jacob climbed up and dropped beside her, breathing hard. "They're not following us anymore," he said. She stared at him. "You could have left me." "Yeah, but I didn't." "Why?" Jacob looked at her with tired eyes. "Because people like you, they only survive when someone cares enough to fight back." She lowered her eyes. Then, softly, she said, "My name is Lyra?" Jacob smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Lyra." For the first time in her life, she felt like someone saw her not as a curse, not as a burden, but as a person. And for the first time, she wanted to live. The sky was starting to brighten. A pale blue pushed away the darkness of the night, and the stars began to disappear one by one. In the broken watchtower, Jacob and the alien girl, Lyra, sat quietly. Resting against the cold stone, Jacob winced as he checked the wound. On his shoulder, it was shallow, but bleeding. He wrapped it with part of his undershirt. Lyra watched him in silence. She had never seen someone take so much pain just to protect someone like her. He glanced at her and gave a weak smile. "Still alive." Lyra gave a tiny nod, almost a smile. Jacob looked down at her legs. The bruising had spread. She still couldn't stand, but her eyes, they had changed. No longer dull and hopeless. They were alert now, curious, alive. "Lyra," he said gently. "Is that really your name?" She hesitated. "No, I gave that name to myself, a long time ago." Jacob tilted his head. "What do they call you?" She looked away. "They didn't. I was born during a storm that killed many of their crops. Ali called me cursed child, or just it." Jacob's fists clenched without him realizing. "They never gave me a name because they believed I didn't deserve one." Lyra continued. "Even my mother was forced to stay silent." Jacob nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad you chose your own name. That takes strength." Lyra blinked. "You think I'm strong. You survived them. You're still here. That's more strength than most people I know." No one had ever told her that before. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the tower, soft and cold. Then Jacob broke the silence. "I need to get you somewhere safe. I'm not just passing through this world. I came here on a mission. My ship is 2 days out, beyond the forest and canyon. If we can reach the old tower, I can send a signal." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then we go." "You won't be able to walk," he reminded her. "I can crawl," she said firmly. Jacob chuckled. "We'll figure it out." Later that day, Jacob built a better sled from the remains of the tower's support beams. It was smoother, easier to drag. He tied ropes to it and placed Lyra gently on top. She watched him work, so calm, so focused. He reminded her of no one. He was different. A stranger in every way. But somehow, she trusted him more than anyone she had ever known as they moved through the burned forest. She asked softly, "Why did you really stop that day?" "Why me?" Jacob didn't stop walking. He answered while pulling the sled behind him. "I saw a girl in chains," he said. And I remembered my daughter Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "You had a daughter." "I did. Her name was Ellie. She died 3 years ago. Not in war, not from sickness, just bad timing. Wrong place, wrong day." He paused. "And when I saw you beaten and tied to that pillar, I saw her. I thought if someone like me had been there for Ellie, maybe she would have lived. I couldn't save her, but I could save you." Lyra stared at him in silence. A long silence. She didn't know what to say. Her voice cracked. "Thank you." Jacob smiled. "You don't need to thank me. You're not a burden, Lyra. You're a person." Her chest tightened. That word person meant more to her than anything. By evening, they reached the edge of a deep canyon. The path was broken, and the bridge was missing. On the other side, the old Cum Tower stood like a ghost, surrounded by crumbling rocks and wild grass. Jacob sighed. The bridge must have collapsed in last year's quake. Lyra scanned the edges. "There's a way down. A slope we can go to the bottom and climb the other side." Jacob looked at her. "That's a rough path. Are you sure?" She gave a firm nod. "I'm not giving up." The human smiled. "Then let's get it done." He secured her tightly to the sled and started lowering her down the slope. Rocks shifted. Dust rose. It was dangerous, but Lyra didn't cry. She gripped the edge of the sled and kept her eyes forward. Halfway down, the sled tipped. Jacob slipped. His hand hit a sharp stone. Lyra screamed, but he caught the rope just in time and pulled her back into balance. When they finally reached the bottom, both of them were exhausted. Jacob collapsed beside her, breathing hard. His hands were bleeding. She reached out and gently touched one. "You're hurt." "I've been worse," he said, smiling. They lay there under the fading sun in the silence between worlds. A human and a girl who had no name, now named Lyra. The night crept into the canyon like a silent ghost. Jacob sat beside a small fire made from dry roots and twigs. Lyra lay next to him, wrapped in a thick blanket. Her eyes were open, watching the flames dance. They were both tired, sore, but alive and close, so close to the old Cum Tower on the cliff above. One more climb. Jacob looked up toward the dark ridge. "Tomorrow we reach it. Once I send the signal, help will come." Lyra nodded. "Will they accept me? Someone like me?" Jacob gave her a calm glance. "They'll accept whoever I bring. But if they don't, I'll leave with you." Lyra stared at him, confused. "Why would you do that?" Jacob leaned back against a stone wall. "'Cause you're not just a rescue mission anymore. You're someone who matters to me." Her heart beat faster. In the silence that followed, Lyra looked toward the stars above the canyon. One star blinked brighter than the others. She closed her eyes and whispered something. Jacob heard it. "What did you say?" Lyra opened her eyes. Slowly. "Just a prayer. You believe in something?" he asked. "I used to," she replied. "My mother taught me before they took her away." Jacob stayed quiet. He didn't push, but Lyra sat up slightly and spoke again. Her voice was softer now. "There's something I never told you." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not just some cursed girl. I'm the last daughter of the House of Velen." Jacob blinked. "Is that important?" "In my world," she nodded. "It was once the highest royal bloodline. My ancestors ruled hundreds of years ago. They built cities, wrote laws. But when power changed hands, they called us tainted because we didn't believe in their false gods." Jacob leaned forward. "So, they hunted you?" Yes, my mother and I hid for years. My father died protecting us. When I was 10, the elders found us. They said I brought famine. They chained me. She looked into the fire, her eyes glassy. They erased my name, my family, my history. They beat it out of me, until I couldn't even remember my father's voice. Jacob's jaw tightened. That's why they wanted you gone. Not because you were cursed, but because you were a threat to their lies. Lyra nodded. You know what that means? Jacob said, voice low but strong. You're not just a survivor, Lyra. You're a symbol. If you live, their lies die. She whispered, that's why I've been scared to live. Jacob reached out and gently touched her hand. You don't have to be scared anymore. Not while I'm breathing. Lyra looked at him, and something new flickered in her heart trust, full and deep. Morning came fast. The climb ahead was rough, almost vertical in some places. Jacob tied thick ropes around Lyra's sled and began the slow climb up the canyon wall. Every few meters, he stopped to secure her with spikes and anchor points. His muscles screamed with pain. His fingers were raw. But he didn't stop. Above them, the old Cum Tower waited like a silent guardian. Hours passed. Finally, Jacob pulled Lyra up the last ledge and collapsed beside her. They had made it. The tower was rusted and covered in moss, but the main dish was still standing. Jacob opened the emergency signal box on the side. Its power light flickered weakly. Just needs a recharge. He muttered and pulled out a solar cell. Lyra leaned against the wall, her face pale. We made it. Jacob smiled. Almost. I'll have contact in 2 hours. She closed her eyes. Her body was weak, but her soul felt stronger than ever. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the wind. Jacob stood up quickly and scanned the ridge. A single drone hovered just above the canyon wall. It had followed them. Lyra, stay down, he said. The drone fired. Jacob tackled her as the beam struck the wall where she'd been. The ground shook. Dust filled the air. Jacob rolled to his feet and fired. Once direct hit, the drone exploded. But more buzzing sounds echoed from the east. More were coming. We have to move, Jacob said. Lyra tried to rise, but her legs gave out. Jacob lifted her again. We head into the tower basement. If I can keep the signal running while we hide, help will find us. Lyra clung to his shoulder. What if they come before help does? Jacob didn't answer right away. He just whispered, then, I'll hold the door as long as it takes. Inside the tower, they found a narrow control room underground. It smelled of rust and forgotten memories. Jacob placed Lyra on an old bench and connected the signal cable. A blue light blinked. Message sent. Lyra looked at him. You kept me alive, even when I didn't want to be. Jacob sat beside her. Now you have a reason to want it. Lyra smiled. Yes, I do. The tower shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lyra pressed her back against the cold metal wall while Jacob checked the last weapon in his hands, an old alien rifle. Half-powered and barely functioning, outside. The sound of war drums grew louder. Jacob looked toward the blinking blue light. On the console, the message went out. They heard us, but we need to stay alive until they arrive. How long? Lyra asked, voice low. 6 hours, maybe less if they hurry, he said. Then he looked at her gently. But they will come. Lyra's lips trembled. They're surrounding us, Jacob. I know. They'll kill you for protecting me. Jacob gave a small smile. Let them try. A deep horn echoed across the canyon. It was not a warning, it was a challenge. Lyra moved closer to the door, trying to stand. Her legs wobbled, but she gripped the wall and stayed up. Jacob noticed. You shouldn't move. I won't hide while you fight alone, she said. Jacob was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. Then stay near me. If I fall, you run. Lyra didn't answer. She had no plans to run anymore. The first attackers came before sunrise. 5 warriors, armored and fast, stormed the tower. Jacob met them at the entry tunnel. His first shot dropped one. The second was slower, dodging behind the wall. Jacob ducked, fired again, then rolled back into cover. Lyra crouched behind him, holding a metal rod she had found ready, even if. Her arms shook. More enemies came. 10. 20. By the time the third wave arrived, Jacob had used up most of his ammo. His uniform was torn, and blood ran down his arm. But he didn't stop. Each time he fell back, he made sure Lyra moved deeper into the tower, down into its old generator levels. They're not giving up, Lyra whispered. They think I'm just one man, Jacob said. A loud crash echoed. The outer door had fallen. Footsteps thundered down the metal halls. Jacob pulled Lyra behind a broken control panel. Stay here, he said. Eyes steady. You can't fight them all, she began. I don't need to, he replied. Enough to give you time. Before she could stop him, Jacob stepped into the corridor alone. The tribal commander, tall creature with a spiked helmet and glowing staff, stood with 50 soldiers behind him. When he saw the human appear, he raised his staff and shouted something in their language, a signal to attack. Jacob raised his hands, not in surrender, but to hold up a small round object, a sonic grenade. Let's dance, he whispered. He dropped it and jumped behind the door. Boom! The hall shook violently. Screams echoed. Walls cracked. But Jacob didn't stop. He rushed forward, grabbing a spear from one fallen warrior and slashing it across another. One by one, he fought, blocked, dodged. He didn't fight like a soldier now. He fought like someone protecting the only thing that mattered. Blood stained the floor. He was outnumbered. Outmatched, but not outwilled. Lyra crawled toward the backup console. Her legs still couldn't carry her weight, but her arms were stronger now. She pressed a button. A second signal burst into the sky. A brighter one. A beacon, please. She whispered, Come now. Suddenly, a shadow appeared at the door. The tribal commander, his armor glowed blue. His weapons sparked with fire. He stared at her with disgust. You, he growled. Hey, the cursed one. You've caused all this. He raised his blade. Lyra stared at him, unblinking. I'm not cursed. I'm royal. I'm alive, and I'm not afraid. The blade came down clang. Jacob blocked it. He was bleeding from his side, barely standing, but his eyes burned with fury. He pushed the commander back and roared. She's not yours to touch. They fought blade to blade, strike for strike. Jacob's body moved on instinct now. Not from training, but from something deeper. Lyra screamed as the commander struck Jacob in the chest. He fell back. The blade rose again, but this time it didn't come down. A flash of blue light filled the room. The commander jerked, frozen, then dropped, lifeless. Behind him stood a rescue unit humans in full armor. They had arrived. Jacob collapsed. Gasping, Lyra crawled to him. Jacob, stay awake. He smiled weakly. Told you they'd come. She held his face in her hands. You've saved me. You've saved yourself, he whispered. You just needed someone to believe in you first. Tears fell from her eyes, not from pain, but from something she had never felt before. Belonging? The medbay lights were soft and white, nothing like the firelit nights Lyra had known. Everything felt too clean, too silent. For the first time in her life, she lay on a bed not made of stone or dirt, but something warm, something soft. She wasn't used to comfort. She looked around nervously, unsure if this was another trick, another punishment disguised as kindness. But when she turned her head, Jacob was there, sleeping in a chair beside her bed, his arm bandaged, chest wrapped tightly. He was alive. He had survived, and somehow, so had she. A human nurse walked in and smiled gently. "You're safe now. The commander said to let you rest, but we can bring you food if you're hungry." Lyra's throat felt tight. "Yes, please." The nurse nodded and left quietly. Lyra looked back at Jacob. Her fingers moved slowly toward his hand and rested there. He woke moments later, blinking as the ceiling lights came into focus. Then he saw her. "Hey," he said hoarsely. "You're awake," she whispered. "I was scared you wouldn't be." Jacob smiled. "You think a few cuts and cracked ribs can stop me?" She smiled back. "It was small, but real. You kept your promise," she said. "But you didn't let them take me." "I made a vow," he replied, "and I meant it." Hours passed. Lyra was given clothes, real clothes. A clean uniform like the human officers. War fitted to her size. She had never worn anything that belonged to her before. In the hallway outside the medbay, two captains spoke quietly about her. "She's part of the Velen bloodline," one said. "If we take her back, she could help rebuild peace. Or she could be hunted again," said the other. "Her people still believe she's cursed." Lyra overheard everything. She didn't flinch. I'd lived her whole life listening to whispers about herself. But now? She had a voice. Later that night, she walked slowly, carefully down the ship's glass corridor. Her legs were weak, but working. Every step felt like freedom. She found Jacob near the viewing deck, sitting with a blanket around his shoulders. He stared out at the stars. She joined him. Neither spoke for a while. Then Lyra said softly, "They want to send me to a safe colony, far from this planet, a place where no one knows me." Jacob nodded. "That sounds peaceful, but I don't." "Want to go alone?" she added. He looked at her. "I don't know where I belong," she admitted. "But when I'm near you, I feel like I do." Jacob's expression softened. "You're not alone, Lyra. You've never been a curse. You're a survivor, a fighter, and if you want, I'll stay with you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why do you care so much?" He took her hand. "Because no one cared for my daughter when she needed someone. And when I saw you chained, I saw her in you. I couldn't walk away again." Lyra squeezed his hand. "Then maybe we can make a new future. Together." He smiled. "A future without chains." Months passed. Lyra began training with the humans. Her body grew stronger. She learned languages, technology, and history. She was no longer a forgotten girl in the shadows. She was becoming a voice, a name, a leader. Jacob stayed by her side, not as a protector now, but as a partner. Together, they visited the stars. But the real journey was inside her. For years, she was taught to believe she was nothing, worthless, a curse. But now, she walked among people who respected her, who asked her what she thought, what she felt, and for the first time, she had answers. One evening, at a peace council on a neutral space station, Lyra stood before dozens of alien leaders. They had come to hear her speak, not as a prisoner, not as a sacrifice, but as someone who mattered. She looked out across the room and saw fear in their eyes. Not fear of her power, but fear of what her survival meant. She stepped up to the mic. "My name is Lyra Velen," she said. "For years, I was told my life had no value, that I was born under a cursed sky, that I deserved pain." She paused. "But I lived. Because one man, one human believed I didn't deserve chains. And if one man can break centuries of silence with a single act of kindness, imagine what we can all do." The hall was quiet. Then the clapping began. Slow, steady, and growing louder, Jacob stood. In the back, watching. Silent, proud. Later, as they walked back to their ship, Lyra whispered, "Do you still carry that photo?" Jacob reached into his pocket and pulled it out, the worn image of his daughter. Smiling beside her mother, Lyra stared at it. Would she be proud? She asked. Jacob looked at her. She'd love you. Lyra smiled through tears. Then maybe. I wasn't saved just for myself. Maybe I was saved. To carry something forward. Jacob nodded. That's what family does. And with that, they walked into the stars, no chains, no fear. Only a future they would build together.